Ari Fleischer, a former White House press secretary for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor, a good friend as well. Ari, take a look at this ad that Gabby Giffords' PAC is running against Rick Scott, the governor of Florida.
We need to stop dangerous people from getting guns. But Governor Rick Scott made it illegal for a doctor to ask a patient if they owned a gun, even a mental health professional. This law was so dangerous that a court had to strike it down.
In addition, Ari, the Wall Street Journal, ABC News out with a poll today, well, that had some interesting pieces in it. Questions of doing enough to prevent mass shootings, asking about the president and the Congress. 77% think Congress is not doing enough, and 62% say the president is not. There's also mental health screening and treatment, and whether that could have prevented the Florida shooting. 77% of people think that it has. And then a stricter gun laws could that have prevented the Florida shooting? 58% saying that it could, certainly not as many when it comes to thinking about mental health. And I wanted to ask you, you've been around the block a few times on gun control debates. Do you think anything is substantially different this time?
I sure hope so, Dana. You know, you just have to hope in your heart that eventually people who are in power will get tired of sitting around and doing nothing. You just have to hope that sometimes they get exhausted because you're not doing a thing. How many of these shootings are we going to have to go through? They're just too heartbreaking. And I don't say that from a pro-gun control point of view, because that's not who I am or what I believe in.
Right.
But I do think collectively our society, our lawmakers, our leaders, the president and the Congress, Democrats, Republicans, have got to figure something out. And the best thing that I've seen is an idea by David French of the National Review to basically beef up what we could be called restraining orders. And we all are familiar with how restraining orders work. If somebody is a threat, they lose some of their liberties to be near somebody. And that's a protective order. We could have a similar thing adjudicated and a process created mostly by the states for people who are gun threats. And I do believe that would be productive.
What about the students? Because, of course, if the students are gathering, it is a compelling story. It's a visual story. The media is going to cover what these students have to say. One thing that's different about them is that they have the ability now to convene through social media that hasn't been there. When Columbine happened, that was one of the first of its kind, and there's been too many since. But now you're seeing this movement. I don't want to dismiss the students, but it is unlikely that students are going to have much of an impact on decisions that are made in Tallahassee. And yet, it is compelling to watch them get on those buses and head to the governor's mansion.
Well, those students should be empowered to speak. Think about what they went through.
Right.
So I think our society should listen to them. But it is the job of adults. It is the job of elected officials to take these various inputs from everybody and make good judgments. And that's where our society has now gotten stuck. After all these various shootings, Las Vegas, where we should have banned bump stocks. All these things happen, and then they just fade away into, well, we won't do anything. And I just don't think that's acceptable. I do think there's one other issue we haven't talked about, Dana, and that's the failure of the federal government and local government in this case, too. You cannot overlook the fact that the FBI received a tip and didn't do anything about it. It breaks my heart to say that because I like the FBI, as well as local police. And remember in Summerlin, Texas, the Department of Defense did not remove that shooter from its list because he was dishonorably discharged. He should have been entered into a list of people not eligible to have a weapon.
Right. So there are rules and laws, and if they were followed, maybe this could have been prevented. I wanted to ask you about another idea. I saw you tweet about it this morning. In the New York Times, Aaron Sorkin writes about how banks could control gun sales if Washington won't, meaning that basically almost like sanctions, right, that banks could decide that they're not going to do business with people who are selling guns, etc. You think that's a bad idea. I'll let you explain why.
Well, I do. But first, let me just say, I think it is healthy to have different people weigh in on what can be done. We do need to listen to various people's ideas and open up our minds to other points of view. In this instance, I do have to say, having carefully read what he suggested, I do not want banks or credit card companies to decide what products you can or cannot buy in this society based on politics or based on, well, the changing issues of the day. If you own one of these companies, do you really want to start going down that road? Do you want people to say, well, you can't use your credit card for this purpose or that purpose, or to fund Planned Parenthood? You can't buy from Planned Parenthood. You can't donate money to Planned Parenthood. You know, once you start to pick which causes you will allow to buy and use that credit cards to use a product, boy, those bank companies would be opening up a Pandora's box.
Yeah, when I saw your tweet this morning, I thought, okay, Ari's thought this through. He's got a good point. I'm going to ask you one last question. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders has moved the briefing to 3 p.m. This is the first press briefing that they've had in a week, and it's been, well, almost like 10 days. It's been a long 10 days, including the news that just broke that Catherine Herridge talked about, which is another person in the Mueller investigation, this time a lawyer, being charged and is expected to plead guilty to lying to the FBI. Your recommendation, if you have any, for Sarah Sanders today?
Oh, boy, put on that flak jacket twice. You know, I remember this feeling. Dana, you do too, for a variety of reasons, travel, holidays. There are days that you just don't brief the press in the White House, and it goes for, can be, you know, a little bit of an extended time period. It feels like a great break until you retake that podium, and then it's a triple pounding. There's pent-up demand from the press to cover all the issues that they haven't had a chance to get to. Today is going to be one of those days, and it's going to be a pounding of a briefing today at the White House.
It is. Well, we're going to bring it to you live when we have it. Ari Fleischer, thank you.
Thank you.